Howdy. Oh, actually, no. How's it going? Oh, Jeff. Hello. Go on, Jeff. What's up? So, some interesting stuff that I've picked up over a while. But I thought I'd start with the difference between a state and civil society. Because, in truth, we think of them as being the same, do we not? Well, that is not the case. I mean, it's only a short... Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not. It's not a short. I hadn't opened it up properly. So it's an article, and it's on, what's it called, this thing? Share Your Essays. Interesting. So anyway, it says the difference between state and civil society explained. They say political sociologists make a clear distinction between the state and civil society. The former is the sovereign, organized, single political community of all the people living in a definite territory, who have an organized government which makes laws, a legislative function performed by the legislature, enforces the laws, executive function performed by the executive, and interprets and applies laws to specific cases, judicial functions performed by the judiciary. The state is the sovereign community of all the people, and its government is the coercive structure which makes and implements authoritative laws, rules, policies, decisions, and punishments. Against this civil society, it means all the non-governmental, private, economic, social, cultural, moral, recreational, and other such associations and institutions of the people. Civil society works outside the state structure and belongs to the realm of autonomous associations and groups formed by individuals in their capacity as private citizens. Yeah. Civil societies work by the people with the help of their own resources and efforts. All non-governmental private organizations, associations, and institutions, including groups, constitute the civil society. It refers to the non-political socio-economic realm, distinct from the state. So, the state is its own thing, and civil society is the mass of the people who, up until recent years, basically had our own economies going, and the state milked that in taxes and fees and license, etc., etc., etc. So they are two separate entities. And I suppose how we could use that to sort of show what's happening today is that through the state, certain forces have captured the state and are now destroying civil society. So that's us, your general population, yeah? Especially if you were, working for yourself in some capacity. That's classed as civil society, and it's got nothing to do with government, or economic, or any such things. So we can say basically that what's happening now is that through the state, these long-standing civil servants, etc., have basically gained the power in the state, and corporatizing everything has been the biggest mechanic for that, because they're the outsourced providers for everything that we used to do within our actual state. So they're all everything the state used to do is now subcontracted out to outsourced providers, and they are attacking civil society. So there's a bit more. Let's have a look. It says, whereas even a democratic state and its government can use its power in an authoritarian way, the civil society always works against every such attempt and is always prepared to oppose such laws and policies of even the democratic government, which in any way try to limit rights, freedoms, and private affairs of the people. So, in what we've just experienced in this last couple of years, has been nothing other than a huge attack by the state against everything that we take for granted in our nation. But of course, now we can see here in Blighty, it's all off. It's all off, it's all done, because Boris has got some serious rebels in the Conservative Party, which I think is jolly good. Now, everybody's focusing on Boris. Right, let's focus on the fact that, hang on a minute, there's some power going on in Westminster, and it would appear to be all on what you class as Tory or Conservative, because I'm not hearing any Labour voices pushing against the state's actions against civil society. So we need to start recognising that who are these people. We need to know who they are, because if they've chose to move in the background, that's because they're seeing enough sort of pushback from civil society. So I just thought that was an interesting sort of take on how we can explain what's actually going on and how it's actually being achieved. So I thought that were an interesting little bit of data there. Hello, J.S. Ventura. Well, that I thought we'd start off with, Jeff, because it gives us the separation. We can now see that it's by the takeover of the state that we, as civil society, are just being annihilated all over the shop. But more importantly, there's obviously now a power base within our political class who have seen enough pushback from the populations to think it's time to stand. And we need to focus on that now, not is Boris a tosser? Because we all know Boris is just another talking head like the rest of them, and a tosser. So we need to know whether are these backbenchers, are these sitting politicians, or are these real conservatives in Whitehall, the state, the civil, where the civil service is actually carried out, sort of thing. So maybe that's what we need to instead of focusing to what they want us to focus to, which is Boris the blonde bombshell and his fruit bat behaviour. But then that's why they all voted him anyway, because they like fruit bat. But then, anyway. So maybe we need to focus a little bit on who are these people that have actually stood up now and said, look, enough's enough. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how movements can connect from the ground up into the heights of political power, because it takes a creative act from us, the population, the people. So there we go. Hello, Anton. Andrea. Hello, Andrea. I hope, Ray, how you doing, mate? Boris is leaving around July. Well, that would not surprise me. I sort of got the impression when he did that Peppa Pig talk that was the beginning of Boris's time. He's done his thing. Now you can all have somebody new to it. Because that's the thing, isn't it? They'll come in like a ton of bricks, probably. Because the parties, all this nonsense. But we have to keep his eye on what has actually just happened in Westminster. That's not so much scared Boris, I don't think, but it's made the political class realise something here that you know, they have to be careful. But there's a power in there, obviously, prepared to say, oh, hang on a minute, we don't want any of this anymore. So we need to know who they are. We need to help them. We need to promote them. And we need to make sure they've got backing, you know, whatever that might entail. But if that's what's happening, that we need to jump on that. Don't say Liz Truss. Have you seen that face? No, she'd be like the demon witch of one of them fantasy films, you know, where the dark witch takes over the world. Yeah, it'd be one of them. Don't want that. Denise Swain. Yeah, but what I'm trying to get across is, I think what we're seeing here, that this rebellion is not necessarily open. Like, oh, we know these people. These are names that are bandied about all the time. But it shows that there is a power base in Westminster. It does appear to be solely from the Conservative side that's saying enough's enough. And of course, yeah, they don't want the party to lose either. But at the end of the day, usually they all piss in the same pot anyway. But this does show that there is potentially a high-level move in the realm of the puppet, which is good, because they're the ones running the show. We need to reckon with that and get on side with them, I think. Well, we don't know. But you also have to be careful that you don't put everything down, Pam. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a fine line, but you've really got to pay attention sometimes to, well, what is really going on? Because the media are going to spin it a different way. Whatever way it is that takes away from whatever's just happened and put it back into their favour. So you've got to be extra careful, and you've got to run on a bit of instinct with this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Listen to Wind a bit. What's Wind saying? But there's definitely something going on in Westminster, and it's got to be taken seriously, because all of a sudden, the end of the controversy. So who knows? It seems to be a bit of it's passing on to other nations and getting ideas now and such. So it's odd. It's hard to read, really, because there's so many factors that could have forced his hand here this way. There's not been the big take-up as they expected of the third. That's a fact. You know, if that doesn't go on, there's no data. They're now backtracking on the NHS staff. So there's something important moving. Grammy, is that Alan Grammy on about? All right. How's he doing? Is he all right? And his sister, that's Cheryl, isn't it? Yeah, I remember them too. Well, it looks like they're going to backtrack anyway for at least 6 months, they said. So we just have to watch and see. But, you know, we need to keep our eyes out. If there's some movement going down in Westminster or in Whitehall, it needs backing, because this could be the last issue. You know, there's always going to be two sides to everything. Whatever you're in, there's going to be the newbies that are pushing this shit and the old guard. But the problem is when that pushing itself in has got all the might, because it's being thrust in at that moment, and the media's behind it, banks behind it, money's behind it, every talking head's behind it. The other side can't really do anything, because until it can ground in all the population, it will go nowhere, and they'll just out themselves and just get sacked. They'll be got rid of. So you do have to be. You have to play smart with this kind of stuff. I mean, I won't say I'm politically savvy, but I've studied enough at shindigs, politics, to have a bloody good idea of what they're capable of. I'll tell you that there. And sometimes some of the biggest spins can win the day, and they can, if they're used for the correct reasons, it can actually be just as successful as all the darkness success we seem to have these days. Echo 59. Yeah, all that has happened is that the thing product is not meeting the sales. Well, I think it's probably a bit more than that, but yeah, that's definitely, like I said, it's because of the low tech up. They're not getting anything that was planned for, but more importantly, they're not getting the data to move it again, you know. So that's another aspect that you've got to take into consideration, but also what's just happened in Parliament or Whitehall, because it could be either or. Well, I mean, come on. If you've got past this too, and you haven't succumbed to fear, you need to pat yourself on the back there, because you know what I'm saying. It's quite if the fear, the push, if it grabs you, it's not a pleasant thing. And I've just had a prime example of that last week. A friend totally against it. Something pretty nasty's happened, and all of a sudden she's sucked into that fear, and it's, you can see. So, you know, once that happens to whoever you are, you're pretty buggered until you can snap out of the loop, pretty much. Well, I don't think we're going to change the media, because the media only exists today, not so much on sales, but on the advertising revenue. So basically, the entire media is being funded by Audi, BMW. Do you know what I'm saying? Hedge funds, all these big operations that would need all the media, the rags, etc. They're the ones that they're the bread and butter now. You know, the days where people rushed out to buy a paper because investigative journalists were actually bringing secrets out of the secrecy realm for everybody, for civil society to know and then act accordingly. Either, and you had lots of toys then back then. The state's the parasite, isn't it? You know, it's got its mitts in everywhere, getting you to sign contracts either and everywhere, register this, register that, and we'll give you nothing. You think you're getting something, but what are you actually getting? You're exchanging your rights to ownership of that property and then turning it into a labelled asset. And all they give you back is, we're going to fine you for this, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do that. You're actually not getting anything in these contracts, if you think about it, whether that's a driving license, because straight away then you're shifted off the highway and you're on the road. You know, these things matter. And until people start to, I mean, it's good because people are starting to get it into the setting now in people's minds. And I think we do have to give kudos to the early freemen for that, because they did bring it. You know, they brought the ideas out to everybody. But then when obviously a bit tapped, but never mind. But nowadays it's sort of embedded in people's minds that, hang on a minute, all this that they call law is actually contract. It's all about contract, and a lot of it is assumed. It's all on assumption. So straight away, it's the questions that they're asking you are purposeful. They're there to show that their assumption is correct and that you are indeed operating on person with the surname, which means you are the debt account. You've negated your role as beneficiary in the communication, which is exactly what they're doing in the courts. They have to remove you from your position of beneficiary in that trust action that's going on against the trust. Okay, but as soon as you lose your position of beneficiary, then you are assumed a pseudo trustee or a trustee, and you're the legal liable, and you're going to do the paying. So it's the same when the police pick you up. They want an ID. They have to have an ID. Now, it's extortion in the fact that if you don't want to give them ID or you're quizzing them, they just threaten to arrest you. But once they know they can put all these threats out, because as soon as you do comply and contract, it doesn't matter what they did to get that ain't going to go in any court, etc., etc., etc. You know what I'm saying? So you've got to stop it before it actually takes place, and you do that by understanding that there is a difference between man and person. It's so simple. That's the core of it. Obviously, to reprogram the subconscious to that is no easy task, and it just isn't. It really isn't. I mean, I sussed it time ago, once I'd had all that fuss and bother, and then accepted that regardless of my feelings on the book itself, that the fact the whole system was built on the Bible, then when I started looking at it from that perspective, then it became pretty clear, and I should do more looking into the biblical stuff myself, but I don't, because every time I do, I seem to come up with something completely different, and I know that when I start talking about it, people are going to go, "You what? Huh? Are you crazy?" Well, so yeah, I limit that. To be fair, I don't like triggering folk because I know it does trigger folk, but then you never learn anything of worth if it doesn't trigger you to the point that you recognize it yourself and move to change it. Yeah. So it's so important that we understand that it's contract, and the trick that you need to learn is how to not contract. So that's basically if you want to call it a military strategy, because it's something you have to actively take part in, to the point that if you're riding around in your car and you're constantly rehearsing what you're going to say, it doesn't matter if anybody were looking at you from outside, they'd think you were, they probably think you're on phone now, but back in the day when I was learning this, people thought you were tapped because they thought you were talking to yourself. So, but it's that intense. You've really got to hit it hard and think, no, I'm gonna conquer this, because it is a strategy. They've laid this out. You're starting to recognize it, but if you attack it and think, well, this is a strategy, I'm going to have to learn a strategy here to keep them over here, and start from there, as opposed to thinking, I'm going to do battle and kick their heads in with words and nonsense, and the more letters I have, the better it's going to be, because they're going to think I'm even more fantastic. Well, they don't, are they? They're just laughing the tits off at you. But you don't get that until you realise the language side of things, the word wizard that's going on here and such. So it's just a stepping stone, isn't it? Until you've got to learn this section, then and then just boom, it pops in your head and you're like, well, wait a minute. Wow, and then it gets there's less anger, I have to say, because you're not as anxious, you're not as fearful. So the prize for that, for yourself on a personal level, it's priceless for your own sense of serenity, from which you can then do anything you're going to do with a different mindset, and you'll have different results. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you've progressed in some way, you've expanded your awareness. But it's getting out, first and foremost, it's recognizing that they've been using a method that's termed schismogenesis through the scripts they put out through the media, the scripts they've put out from history, to divide, in order each divided side can be slapped into a loop by which they can't see outside of that, because they are there and they are not there, and vice versa. And so if you take that schismogenesis as the mechanic that they've weaponized and created what's being termed autistic conditions in the people, and this is not anything to do with what we've learned about the aluminium that they've been put in as adjuvants, or whatever they call it, for years, because that does seem to have a striking, well, basically it's found in all brains of anybody that dies with Alzheimer's, so it's got in there somewhere, but classed as more of a nanoparticle. That's sort of, I have actually just done a video and put that on Rumble, because it's a bit sensitive on that, even though it's nothing to do with what's going on today. It's years ago. I just thought this is what we all were all looking at 10 years ago when they had the H1N1 garbage. So we were aware of that kind of stuff, but it gets lost, you know what I mean? As you stop, it gets lost, some of that. So when somebody sent it me, I thought, I put it on Facebook, and no, nobody could access it, so they blocked it immediately. And I thought, well, it's quite important that people remember that side of things without this nonsense as relates to them things. So it's a good, it's only short, it's only about 3 minutes, but it's just reminds you of what answers weren't ever answered back then, and I don't think they've been answered today, as the pseudoscience just railroads over the top of all that and shows all this nonsense down your neck, sort of thing. Cognitive dissonance, yeah. But the idea of the feedback loop is, which is what autism is. I like that. It's a bit like the territory and your map sort of symbolism that Adam gave us like a couple of years ago, maybe. I can't remember how long exactly. And this one again, now it's schismogenesis, creating, used in such a way that it creates division and puts each side into a feedback loop that they can't think outside of. And that's the trigger. You know, when people trigger, it's usually because somebody's presented something in a manner that went in that feedback loop, because either they're interested in it or they understand that tradition or that knowledge base. And this is when people tend to react really, really aggressively in that first instance. It's because somebody's been successful at presenting a sort of idea in a way that this feedback loop just got smashed, and in went the error. So does that make sense as well? So I do like now this, using the symbolism of schismogenesis and feedback loop, because I can really see the third eye picture of that, and you can see it actually being carried out by what you would consider to be opposing sides, which is why I'm sort of thinking it might be a bit more important what's just happened down in Westminster than we're giving it credit. This might not just be another stage thing. This could be. I mean, it might not be. I'm not trying to build up false hope here, but we have to be aware of others that are trying to operate in the same kind of way that we are, which is help people see beyond the fear. Because that's basically, that's the trip out mechanism. And, you know, for most that are, it's a waste of time trying, because they are stuck. They are so stuck in that loop. It's going to take something pretty intense to shift them off it, I think. Yeah, well, Vanguard and BlackRock, yeah, but have you heard of companies like Raytheon and AECOM? You know, this is the elephant in the room. So when I were looking into the academies, way back from 2008, I think, or 9, I think 2008 when I was aware of it, and then we started really getting into it. Well, the first thing that were clear with me, it was the Kabbalistic setup of this sort of the first academy that they were doing as a sort of big shebang. So they were full of Kabbalistic geometry in the planning. But what you've really got wise to quickly is how all the finance were coming in through the military. So this is the global military, which has co-opted all our national militaries through NATO, the Eastern alliances, and all the alliances that have been created since Second World War. It's basically just been a mechanic to remove all the nations of their own fencing. You know, that's what's happened there. Not good. So this is what they give you, BlackRock, Vanguard, and we all know these things. You know, you look at BlackRock or is it Vanguard, and mainly you look at Vanguard and it's mainly BlackRock shareholding. So the, you know, it's fronts on fronts. But now Raytheon, you just to look. I mean, it's a long time since I've looked into these things, and I did know quite a lot about them back then, enough to where I could have spoken about it if I were doing that then. But these are huge. I mean, these are just so ginormous. Raytheon, AACOM, there's loads more of them, and I've forgotten. I can't remember. And then you've got NATO itself, you've got AFRICOM, you've got a com for all over shop. And, you know, it's like, who's running this supreme? Was it Eisenhower said when he left office? Was it him that did the video warning everybody about the rise of the military-industrial complex because it's private, but you're paying for it, sort of thing. Your lives are going to be serving the agenda of the military-industrial complex, not your nation, not in any way the security of your nation. When they say security, you think nation, they mean the corporate monster. That's what they're securing, you know. And any nation that might come up against that, Iran, for instance, any country that didn't want a central bank, has been annihilated in the most ridiculous way with our boys and girls. Because this girl is in there now, isn't there? Anyway, so it would be distracting that in combat, wouldn't it? If you've got this beautiful ass in front of you, you know, running, and you'd be like, you get shot. I'm not sure that's a good idea, to be honest. Anyway, we'll not get into that because we'll level up girls trying to keep me in. So, sign everything .vc. Yeah, v's.c. Yeah, perfect. Under duress. But don't do signatures. Why would you communicate in cursive, which is the language of the dead? If you're going to put your mark anywhere, autonomy, you can still use the v.c. But get off the dead and see if you can get your name written in Book of Life. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's a lot of people in that Book of the Dead, and they've just signed off. You want to get yourself out of that and onto the Book of Life. You get what I'm saying here? And these are the methods of doing it. But yeah, VC, that's no, but never, you know, understand there's the language of the dead and then there's language. You don't want to be touching that language of the dead at all. Keep it all in the English language. Not American English, English. Not that I have anything against the Americans, of course. Although they don't seem to love me this time round. I think it's because of the trumpet. Anyway. Singing in the car. Yeah, you could sing it. Yeah. You have to know the two because you've always got to be conscious of what you're saying. You have to. So, like the last two live streams, which are interesting, that I did, which are on the back of that flu shindig. Especially on the first one after that, I couldn't. Normally, when you're doing a live stream, you're trying to say it in your head before you speak it, if you will, because it's surprising how many words you change from what you've thought to what you speak. Yeah, and that's an art I'm trying to grasp, and it's not that easy, to be honest. But the last two live streams, I couldn't do that. The first one, especially, I didn't have that. It was ridiculous. which is why I was swearing my ass off and quite disgusted after when I watched it, because I thought, ooh, that's shit. That's even shitter. So we whisked it off, edited it, and put it back up. And I took 20 minutes off it, just effing and jeffing, for absolutely no reason at all. Just me being obnoxious, probably because I felt like shit. So, yeah, and now it's back. So I might not get excited about it these days. I might be even better. So let's have a look. VC, VI, coactus. This indicates signed under duress. Yep, it is. A mate of mine used to do 3 dots, then V.C. Don't ask me why, but he did it everywhere. He even opened bank accounts on it. How about that? The English language has been weaponized to fool men and women. Yes, well, you say weaponized. What they've actually done is remove Latin, they've removed grammar. So we have no concept of that there is more than what we're offered at school. You know, you think your teachers are teaching you. And most of them are just copying, aren't they? A teacher is what? Somebody that went through college was told, this is what you've got to say. And that's it. And then you pass, depending on how well you've copied. How well do you mouth off everything they've said to you? And the more you get it right, the more you get, I don't know whether your hat gets bigger, your bum gets bigger, or you get master's degree and all the BA honours and all this bollocks. When basically what you're telling the world is, I'm fucking ace at copying. That's a word. Sorry. And that's what you're basically saying. I'm even more better copier than you are. Now, if what you've copied is valid and good, fine. But, you know, if it comes via education, then it really isn't, is it? You know, it's not what we're doing. With Legalese, you just need to know. I think what it is with Legalese is once you can go beyond that slightly. How would I put that? It's like I say, as you keep applying yourself to it more and more, just look at other concepts. So, for instance, you might come across an old concept that you've been using for a while. If you come across it again and you'd forgotten about it, it's different again than how you understood it before because you've shifted. It's hard to explain, but it's like being in a computer game, really. If you do good shit, you get good prizes. If you don't, you go, get headshotted. But then you respawn in them games, so but you don't respawn in real life. You've got to remember that. Yeah, scripture. It's just a narrative. It's Jack and Ori, isn't it? It's story time. But if you look at people that are, the more fanatical they are, it's not the doctrine that they focus to. In fact, if you get down to it, what they're actually pushing is contrary to the actual doctrine they claim to be on, but because they're following scripture. You know, he kicked his head in, and so I kicked his head in and shot his wife. And it's like, and they're just carrying that on for 25,000 years. And, you know, and my gang's massive, so we're going to invade Blackburn and kick your heads in and nick all your houses. And it's like, yeah. But that's what they focus to, the war. The bad, poor us, look what happened to us 25,000 years ago. They took our sheep and shagged them. Well, that's Yorkshiremen did that, which is why we had Pennines built. Buggies them Yorkshire lads. I'm fibbing. I love Yorkshire people. They crack me up. They absolutely crack me up just when they open the gob. Because if you think I talk funny, I'm telling you now. Have you ever heard of Yorkshireman? A good broaden. Honestly. Exactly. If you want to know their language, read Black's dictionaries. That is the dictionary for the legal realm. That's what it's doing. Well, you do script your own, don't you? But you use the language that keeps you out of that jurisdiction. So, for instance, the first thing you're getting across is, whoa, Mr. Assumption. Whoa, Mr. Boy there, thinking I'm person, and then you're going to bum me and all this shit. Just hold your horses, lad. I stand before you as a flesh and blood man as derived from the word of God. Now, that might hurt you to say it, but I'm saying what I've said to you before. You've got to apply the fact that this system is built on the biblical tradition. Like it, lump it, love it or hate it, it doesn't matter. If you want to understand the game you're in, you've got to go back to its source. Otherwise, so that then that puts you there. You've told him you're not person. And you have to build on that, because what you're doing is keeping that. So then you have to know all the tricks. So they're going, well, what's your ID? So what do you mean, my ID? You're looking at it. I'm talking to you, flesh and blood. No, I need ID with a picture on. And you're like, what do you mean, ID with a picture on? So I said, no, you need to define that. Why when I'm studying you, talking to you, do you need a piece of paper with an image on it? You know, and you'll say, well, no, I need ID. And I'll say, well, so you're not defining it because I don't think you understand it. And I'd just say something like, are you asking me to commit fraud by making the claim that I own or that I am a name with surname? Is that what you're trying to extort from me? Yeah. So you're not making statements so much. You're putting it in a question. Are you? Is it the case? Yeah. Is it not the case? You've got to learn to not go, well, I know 66 and 49, 29, 18 and 45 million. Even they don't know them, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, no. You don't want to get into that rabbiting because you're making statements all over, say, shop. I'm this, I know that, and this, blah, blah. No. They come at you. They're making some kind of charge. They want to make a charge against you, don't they? That's what they want to charge you trust. Ding, you're paid. They're happy. They get a tap on the back. Chief Constable's happy. Cash is coming in. But so you can say that to him, like, so are you trying to extort me to suggest or make the claim that I own or I am the name? Because you're not, and you don't own it. It's a trust set up by another, but you are in right the beneficiary. You are also the settler. The reason we use the settler is because you want to make it clear in your communication that you're taking two parts and that the only position left in that trust is that of trustee. And then some of them you can apply and you're in a fiduciary role, as it were. So, you know, they're bound then to the rules according to whatever it is. So you would need to know a little bit there as well, you know what I'm saying? What are their rules, basically? Because they're the ones that have to obey these rules. You only have to obey these rules if they get the contract, if you present yourself as the person, you know. And then, you know, if they get in church again, you could just say, well, are you trying to force intercourse in order I make that claim? Because there's another word for intercourse, isn't there? A forced intercourse, which is rape. Now, who wants that being thrown around at them, you know? So what I'm saying is, at all points, your first points to learn is that how do I rebuff? How do I keep them here? And that is simple, by not being aggressive, not being too argumentative, be stern, because you're a man, you know you're a man, and that's the standing you're coming from. This guy's making a serious cock up, and you're going to have to help him because he's thick, or if they're a bit older, they're acting thick. You with me? And you have to make sure you don't give him that joinder. So that's where you start, learning the difference between man and person, because you just don't want to be person, full stop. Not even a little bit. Not even an incy tiny titchy little bit like that. You don't. You want to be man, because everything that's going on in that shenanigans is based on your estate. I've been looking at some interesting stuff as well about that, in the sense that if you obviously we all missed claiming our dominion back at 21, but at 65 that trust matures. So what I've seen of late is the suggestion that, so you get to 65 and all of a sudden you get these letters off the state saying, oh, we want to give you this pension. It's 25p a year. Do you want it? It's amazing. And you'll go, oh, yes, I've been waiting for it all my life. Yeah. So what you think that's fantastic and amazing, but what they're actually doing is bumming you, because that trust has matured. So by rights, it's yours. You can cash it in. But before that, they need to get you to recontract so they can keep it and give you a measly pension and keep telling you what to do. So you're supposed to go in at 65. I mean, obviously it's not going to be this simple, but I'm looking at this because there's got to be a way that this can be formulated in paperwork. And basically, so you have your trust, and then you've got your national insurance account, which is the bank. It's like, you could call it the bank account for the trust. So that's where the cash is. Yeah. So if they're throwing things back at the trust, which they have to do because they can't diminish the trust, they can only add to it. But into this schism thing here, this national insurance trust. So he does an open ledger and he does a hidden ledger. Right? So at 65, you want to make it clear that, no, thank you. The trust has matured. I'd like a copy of the hidden and the open account and a check, please. But you don't want the check, you want it in gold. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm looking into this at the moment because this looks bloody good, because it's right. The trust matures at 65. How are you benefiting? You know? So that's an interesting bit of data that I've sort of found in this last couple of weeks, and I'm quite enjoying myself looking into this. So you can keep that in mind if you shit yourself up. But, well, I'm past 21 now. I mean, I'm past 21 now. I'm nearly 22. Can you believe it? Jeez, that's gone quick, I'll tell you. Show me the law which compels me to have a name. Yeah, because once you establish your man, then anything they throw at you, you can just say, well, is that applicable to man? Is that applicable to man? And is that applicable to man? Because it's not. It's applicable only to person, and it has to be the debt account. You with me? So that's basically, this is where you need to start, because once you start to get this base, this ammunition together, you can start using it. And, you know, you don't have to be running around with your sphincter. Sure. Even though you're not doing anything wrong. You're that problem now you think you might be. You forgot, in case you are. But anyway, it's all off. I forgot. I read after 4th, words are starting to be removed. What, is this blacks? Yeah, Ray's right. The Persian is a fictitious character, and your name is what capitals is the language of the dead. What do they call it in Americans? That styles thing, glossa, sign language. Now when I was looking into that a few years ago when it came out, I sort of got another intuition, but I've seemed to have forgotten it. And I can't formulate it. It was very interesting, and it was to do with why they do this on telly, you know, on every program for nut jobs. So, and it was tied into that, and so it made that even sinister as well, which I thought, and I forgot. I wish I could have. I should have wrote that down, and I didn't. Or if I did, I've wrote it down and put it away somewhere and can't find it. I'm good at that. I'm really good at that. Be careful with sovereign, because they, like I said before in other videos, they've actually created a full format in how to deal with anybody that shows themselves in any way a sovereign citizen or a free man. So I try to keep off that. I'm not saying it doesn't have value, it does. However, there is a warning in the Bible about claiming sovereignty, in case you're claiming sovereignty from big cheese, like. Anyway, just a thought. But you don't actually need to use that term, to be honest. You really don't have to use the term. And because they're big on it and hot on it, yeah, you want to keep on top when you're communicating with them, not give them anything. Don't be giving them things. You don't want to give them anything. It's the checkmate. is what you're after. They can't move. Yeah, you don't want to kill them. You don't want to annihilate them and blow them up. You just want to put them into a position where it's checkmate. They can't move. Yeah, that's what you. So, you know, chess isn't everybody's game. And I used to play it at school because we had a chess club. And there were probably a couple of fit birds in there, which is why I joined it. But I ended up quite enjoying playing chess, believe it or not. And I did actually do it for maybe a full year. So, but then it's not something I'd want to sit there and do. It's just, I can't keep still long enough, you know what I'm saying? I'm jumping up and down like a jack in a box. But, yeah, you think of it in these kind of terms. And so when you're formulating your strategies, you understand what it is. So it's a bit of a chess game. You're moving to instant checkmate, and you're going to do that by formulating a strategy of understanding how they're trying to trap you. So it's ID. The next one is, what's your date of birth? Well, unless you're a ship, you know, unless you look like Victory, HMS Belfast, I'm sorry, you weren't birthed. You were born. So that's another trick. So you would respond, well, I haven't got a birth date because obviously I was born. But the trust that I'm settler and beneficiary for as a birth date, would you like me to give you that? And then it's, well, all right, clever dick, have you got a bank account? Well, I don't have a bank account, but the trust has a bank account. Would you like me to provide you with that? Can you see how you just, yeah? So if you can get that solid so that you're totally confident with it, your next step then is, because you've established your standing as man and different to person, while accepting that you are aware of a trust in play to which you have an interest in as settler and beneficiary. And you remember, you're taking those two positions just to let them know, yeah, so there's only one left, pal, for you and all your boyfriends. It's trustee. How am I benefiting from this trust action? Because when they hit you and they're trying to hit your trust, it is a trust action. You know what I'm saying? And you could also try and flick them into a fraud as well. But as long as you kept that position of beneficiary and kept them, ensure that they stay on trustee, which of course, as we've discussed before, is what the judge is trying to achieve all the time, which is to steal or get you to relieve yourself of the position of beneficiary. And that, as I said, from all them years I've tossed about, learning what I thought we had to learn, which were all the garbage, just accepting that it's built on the Bible, and everything changes. You're seeing things different and such like that. So wait till I get to 23. Why is it bad? Is it crap when you get to 23? Lion's shirt, nice one. Ike is a shill. He certainly is. A big one. Look, I watched a video the other day on this capensis shit. Okay, so basically, you know them skeletons in found with heads about that big, right long ear, and the African tribes used to try and copy it. So there's obviously been a race at some point that had big heads, yeah, or as they're trying to present, still exists and is running the world. Now, that might be, I don't know, I've never met one. But then I thought to myself, this is interesting. And then all of a sudden it come up, and they're all fucking rhesus negative. And I'm like, for God's sake. Now, I've never seen anybody with an head like that, let alone a rhesus negative. So I'd say to them, and provide me with a specimen alive rhesus negative, and I might take you seriously. And this is Ike playing this game. You know, what are they playing at here? Why do they want to get rid of rhesus negative people? Now, you know, you've got to ask these questions, because that's what David Ike is pushing. The little Nazi that he is. Oh shit, I flipped it the wrong way around. That stank. Oh, okay now. So yeah, that's my issue, Mr. Hick. Why are you trying to kill me? I thought you were a man of peace and love and joy and happiness and lizards and things like that. Why do you want to shoot me, Mr. Hick? I don't get it. I didn't want to shoot you. I would if I have to, like it won't bother me either, you know. But what I'm saying is, I'm not going out of my way to want to shoot you. Behave yourself. Just behave yourself, pal. As you'll have me on your ass. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. Well, man, it might be an acronym, but man is the language of the ancient texts. Not person, human. Man. Grandeur of Dominion, yeah. That's how I used to term it on style manuals. Well, I did actually have it. In fact, I put it on one of my pages where I discussed it, and how it happened, I don't know, but the actual copies that I'd put up there disappeared. And how they've done that in my website, I don't know. Without me being able to see that they've done it. It really is. The Freeman and any mention sovereign, and they've a set piece, set. I experienced it New Year's Eve that year when I got arrested. Other people I know, same. As soon as they think you know a bit, they're onto that, and you give them a bit, it's ridiculous. They were all dancing. I'm in cop shop with all these billocks, and they were dancing. Oh, Freeman and long night. Oh yeah, no, boys. I said you got a man here, flesh and blood. That's it. They were like little kids dancing about like prancing little faggots. And I just thought, your coppers, like in grunts, soldiers, they were fit. I'll tell you what, they were like soldiers to me. They were fit as 10. Young little shiny red rose faces, fit as they come. Well, when it comes to your adverts, you just put a counter deed in. Just send a counter deed into the correct medical whatever registrar. Just counter deed. It removes assumption. This is a game of removing assumption. So what we went through earlier in relation to how you don't give them joinder. What you're doing is removing their assumption. You're challenging their assumption by bringing fact to the table. That's what they don't like, which is why they go into a dance, trying every which way but loose to drag you in. ID, date of birth, driving license. Is this a vehicle? Yeah, on the road. You V70. Your V70s you trapped. It's a contract. It's a contract. Oh yeah, 8 thumbs up, geezers. I don't know what's happening. I don't know whether YouTube are getting a bit naughty now, but I'm seeing a lot of odd things. So who did you fancy? I can't remember. Ray? No, Ray were ugly. No, I were into birds, me, man. I was just a dirty little git, mate. Filthy at school. I don't mind admitting that because it's true. I were terrible. Grammy's sister, Cheryl, weren't she? When'd she call Cheryl? Cheryl Graham. I remember Cheryl. No, it weren't Grammy's sister. No, who were it? Do you know what I think it were? And I can't say her name actually because no, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying it. You'll know it, but I'm not saying it. Shut up, Ray, trying to get me in trouble. Well, the rhesus negative can go in anybody. So if you are dropping dead and dying, I can just like Rambo cut myself and just drip it into your gob and you'll be right. You know what I'm saying? Or if you want to do it properly, put it in a drip. You can all have it. It's good shit. But I can't have yours. So it's obviously, it comes before. Which is why, from what I've seen, and I'm not claiming to know, it would make more sense to presume that the rhesus negative are the original race before this Adam and Eve malarkey. I can't, yeah. I'm not happy with this. So it's not 6th gen now, it's 7. They're actually installing 7th generation. So you probably not hear much about 6 because it went from 5, a bit of 6, and then they're throwing 7 in. I were looking at till the other day. Copy based. Yeah, we are copy based. It's just not worth getting into them with this Freeman stuff because it'll just. I mean, maybe you have to experience it to know what I'm saying, but honestly, keep off that. What is a V70? Oh, that's my car. I mean a V5. What am I talking about? V70. That's my motor. Oh, shit. I don't know where I got that from. Clyde was going out with Cheryl. The Clyde. He's just had a brain transplant. That's Clyde. Yeah. And who else had one? Oh, Kingy. Kingy's had one and all. I don't know whether you know Kingy, Ray, but Kingy's had a brain transplant and Clyde's had one. Good lad, is Clyde. Right, so let's get back to what I were originally doing because I can yabber on me, can't I? My God. Shit, I was listening to that last live stream. I'm thinking, geez, you're borderline preaching, boy. Chill out. You know what I'm saying? I had to tell myself off. And I think, I'll tell you what, it's a fine line. I think it's a fine line keeping people's attention and then going too far. That's something else I'm going to have to learn. You know what I'm saying? It's not an easy do. But I were poorly sick, so that's my excuse for the last two. Right, where are we? Well, we're looking, because I've got more to talk about. So we looked at the difference between state and civil society. I hope we got across the fact that it's the takeover of the state by forces hidden that are now attacking civil society, which is us, all our private enterprise, etc., our freedoms. So it's the state is actually attacking civil society through the takeover of the state. As I said, I'd encourage people to look at what's happening at the moment with all the rules now ending, because it may be the case that there's a powerful force in Westminster now showing itself because it thinks it has enough support on the ground in the population. I don't know, but we have to keep our eye out there. If there is a move within our state to move against this stuff, it will only work if we work with it. We need to know who they are. We need to work with them, support them in every way we can, if that's how it turns out. And otherwise, we may be missing a bigger opportunity than we think. Right. Okay, so this is it's about schismogenesis, and it's from a website called Horticulture. And it's been written by Jason, which I think is J.K. So it says grand unified conspiracy theory. It says consequently, a necessary step for most of us in the work of renouncing this world is to become aware of it as an engineered control system. Thus, the act of investigating the structures and exposing the agendas for those dedicated to the spiritual path and also called to this work can be of direct service to contemplate life. If we can witness the darkness of this world with apatheia, with detachment and equanimity, then we will have accomplished the greater part of the work of shadow integration. We will be led, and he said, God willing, to the point of supreme nausea, where we can vomit the world along with the ego, its master and slave, out of the way of our souls forever. And that was written by somebody called Charles Upton, The System of the Antichrist. Personally, I freely admit that I do not know if there is a unified conspiracy being implemented by a constant and persistent group over long periods of time. But can the skeptic admit they don't know there isn't? Nor do I personally feel much need to try and find this out, since the very terms of such a proposition make it impossible to do so. A conspiracy revealed is no longer effective as a conspiracy, unless the conspiracy is to make us believe in one. What I do find myself wondering is this: if the people who promote the idea of grand unified conspiracy had a better understanding of the subtlety, intimacy, and intricacy of psychological, social, cultural, and even spiritual engineering involved, would they still be able to maintain their belief? By the same token, on the other side of the river Styx, what of those who reject the idea as absurd? If they are to spend sufficient time sifting through the evidence, which generally they haven't, would they feel secure in their position? As any Marxist will tell you, there's plenty of evidence of how a purely economic-based society acts as a program of dehumanization, with all the earmarks of organized malevolence or a grand conspiracy. A medical institution that unconsciously or covertly prolongs people's stays and undermines their healing process to maximize profits comes up with policies designed to fragment, destabilize, and unhinge the patients. This can be put down to cynical corporate profit motives, but at the same time, it's quite in accord with how a CIA MK Ultra front would operate. So which is it? We have here a case of the effects of a conscious conspiracy without the necessity of posting a fully conscious causal agency. The ball was set in motion long ago, and now it's simply rolling down grooves laid down by decades or centuries of business as usual. So I think that's a fair point. But then, so if we're looking for a grand conspirator, then I would just suggest that it's the ruling lines understand the mechanics of this place. And if we're to go back to what the Insider speaks of, which he says, we will give you the tools occasionally, but it's others that pick these tools up and start using them in their way. And of course, it's coming from top down mainly. So by the time it gets down to man, it's already been totally and utterly turned into a monster that serves them. So if there is, in my opinion, a grand conspiracy, it's got nothing to do with, as most people think it is. It's the fact that the general masses are picking it up and going with it. They're going with bad ideas. You know what I mean? You're watching bad films. You're listening to bad music. Everything you're doing is a frequency that takes you to a lesser caricature of who you actually were before you started to do that. So it's all choice, isn't it? So the tools, everything's there. It's what are you choosing, or are you just sucking on whatever comes out? The media, entertainment, you're just sucking on it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like the other day, I thought I'll have a look for these, see what films are on, and I went through from 80s. I think I got up to 2006, and I think I found two films that I could care about, because I'd watched a lot of them, and the others I'd never watched because I was just never interested in watching. And I just thought to myself, it's just so much shit out there that people are just watching it for the sake of watching it, not realizing that it could very well be degenerating their own character without them actually realizing it. So I'd say if there is a grand conspiracy, it's more based on, we'll put this out and let's see what the monkeys do kind of thing. And then they just try and keep control of everything. Or it could be as the sort of traditions speak of, which is there is a bad lot down here running the entire show for their own ends, and they've passed it down through the generations to their offspring. And that how they operate out in the system is through controlling money, having secret societies operate as an intelligence network, all leading back to them families. Now, that's happening anyway, whether it's for good or ill. But, you know, we don't know these things. But then, you know, you look at scripture as it's not so much put out, then that is exactly the system that's been set up by the original force that actually tells you that he set this up. And that he set up the other side of it, the rebellious side of it, in order to create this place as some kind of testing ground to show who you really are, and that you can create this persona for the majority of your life, but it's going to fall apart at some point, you know. And if it doesn't fall apart for you while you're here, it's certainly going to fall apart for you when you move into your next experience. Yeah, if they are, but we do need to keep his eyes on what has actually just happened in Westminster, to be honest. Or even Whitehall. It could be Whitehall. Well, they want to alter the genetics, yeah, but they can only do that if people say, yeah, okay, I'll take that. So again, consent, innit? You know, you've got to take that core responsibility, or you're going to stay in the world. I mean, and people, so as you start learning this, so there's assumption and there's fact. This legal system that based in assumption can't operate in the law. It can't. It's a lesser creature. I lost my train of thought there. What sparked me off there? No, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, it's just consent and the ignorance of the fact that we are actually in a contract that we don't know anything about. But that, so people just keep adding to the contracts because they're actually moving further into the world. That's basically what I was saying. But I lost a bit there, I think. The £1 million note, yeah, I've seen that. I can't actually remember its script though. So is there anything else worth in that? So I just thought that were interesting as well. What else did I get? Aha! This comes from ThoughtCore. An introduction to psychological warfare. And this were Robert Longley, 22nd of October 2019. Oh, that's when it was updated. So psychological warfare is the planned tactical use of propaganda, threats, and other non-combat techniques during wars, threats of war, or periods of geopolitical unrest to mislead, intimidate, demoralize, or otherwise influence the thinking or behavior of an enemy. While all nations employ it, the US Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, lists the tactical goals of psychological warfare or psychological operations, PSYOPs. So Psy-war or PSYOPs, that's what they call them, and it's assisting in overcoming an enemy's will to fight, sustaining the morale, and winning the alliance of friendly groups in countries occupied by the enemy. So there's your immigration. Influencing the moral and attitudes of people in friendly and neutral countries towards the United States. To achieve their objectives, the planners of psychological warfare campaigns first attempt to gain total knowledge of the beliefs, the likes, the dislikes, the strengths, the weaknesses, and vulnerabilities of the target population. According to CIA, knowing what motivates the target is the key to a successful psyop. And I touched on this before, and I said these groups depend on your habitual nature, because that's where they will be able to achieve whatever they want to achieve once they know your pattern. You know what I'm saying? If you're ever feeling that's on, you just come out your pattern completely and do nothing that you should do and do everything the opposite way around. You know, because they only spend money for a certain length of time and then they get fed up. So it's counterintelligence, that kind of stuff. A war of the mind. As a non-lethal effort to capture hearts and minds, psychological warfare typically employs propaganda to influence the values, beliefs, emotions, reasoning, motives, or behavior of its targets. So influencing values, well, that's, you demolish the religion, and the religions do it. It gets done from within the religions, and then this has happened forever. And then you get all the sex and the garbage, the filth, the porn on the television. So that's propaganda. That's what is propaganda. So when people say to you, why do you watch the telly? It's propaganda. It's because everything that you're watching is from the enemy, to stop you from looking at things yourself so that you fully understand the concept around whatever the situation is that you're interested in. So they just bombard you with propaganda so that you don't look for yourself, you see. And you think you know. They've got you in a loop. Because what you learned 10 years ago from ITV is come back into play now, and so you knew it. You know it because you saw it 10 years ago on ITV, and now Channel 4 said same. It's like, way back in the loop. Go, in you go, you see. So that's an example of propaganda, and how it's used through the media. And it says, the targets of such propaganda campaigns can include governments, political organisations. So the propaganda campaigns as well against governments has also been added with the blackmail. That's your Epstein type of cell. They've been attacking the politicians and governments in that way, and then training them with this new NLP system that's been in since Tony Blair took office. Governments, political organisations, advocacy groups, military personnel, and civilian individuals. Simply a form of cleverly weaponized information, a psyop propaganda may be disseminated in any or all of several ways. Face-to-face verbal communication, so that's school. That's when you go on all these courses for your job. Yeah. Audio-visual media like television and movies. Audio-only media, including shortwave radio broadcasts like those of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, or Radio Havana. Purely visual media like leaflets, newspapers, books, magazines, and posters. Well, they've got all them under the wing. More important than how these weapons of propaganda are delivered is the message they carry and how well they influence or persuade the target audience. So that's just an insight into what the psychological warfare thing is, that the state now, because they've captured the state, is thrusting on civil society because they are two separate entities, which we discussed at the beginning of this live stream. So you might have to go back to that if you wish to hear what we were saying there. So the next one is terror management theory. There's only one part I'm going to read here because I have read to others, but this just seemed to hit a nerve, and it's called death anxiety. Emerging theories. Several new theories have emerged, each offering a distinctive perspective and drawing upon a distinctive realm of empirical research. Terror management theory is an empirically orientated offshoot of Becker's position. Its core proposition is that self-esteem and a positive worldview serve as effective barriers to death anxiety. When we feel ourselves imperiled, we can call upon ourselves of self-worth and confidence, as well as our belief that our society is basically sound and the universe a friendly place in which to dwell. Well, you know what I'm saying? Can you see how they've attacked that? You don't have your self-confidence anymore. And they've removed confidence we have in our own society, because it's been taken over by this other system and thrust down our necks. Whatever contributes to growth of self-esteem and confidence, and whatever contributes to the moral character and resilience of society, can stand between ourselves and mortal terror. So the less confident you are in yourself, in your future, in your society, your nation, the less chance you're going to fall foul of death anxiety, which is what they got everybody into, isn't it? Let's be honest. Like a death march. It says developmental learning theory places death anxiety within the mainstream of socio-behavioral research. We learn to fear, avoid, or cope with death-related phenomena, just as we learn to deal with all other life challenges through a long process of maturation and social interaction. It is not necessarily to assert either that all anxiety or no anxiety is related to death, or that we all have some kind of fixed response to death-linked situations and symbols. As a society and as individuals, the shape and intensity of our anxieties and coping strategies are pretty much in our own hands and are likely to vary from generation to generation. So again, death anxiety, these are ideas that are in the mix that they use when they're trying to formulate what to do, etc., etc. But clearly you can see that understanding has now been weaponized and has been successfully utilized against the entire world, really, especially in this last couple of years. I'll come back and have a look at what you guys are saying. Yeah, at least the own films, you use your own imagination, and there were some pretty good moral stories in them, weren't there? A lot of them. 3 generations becoming fully complete in all of that species. Yeah, and because they pass down, it just goes on and on. Watch the original Star Trek. Well, we all did, didn't we? We all did. It's basically just a symbol symbolizing that you've got Spock the logic. You've got all these different characters that are all different parts of you. And the craft is your body. So it takes all them parts for you to go off hoity-toiting about. And your horse and your car, whatever you want to do. So that's the symbolism of Star Trek. It's just another symbolic look at the human form, you know. And it's the same with Highlander. That's another great same kind of symbolism, the film Highlander. There's only one part here that can, you know, raise the sword, and you have to get rid of the sleuth, you have to get rid of the party boy, until the final one is the most dangerous one, and that's the pure animal side of yourself, the Kurgan. So yeah, I love them old films because they actually, you know, there's so much good occult in them if you can pick it up. You know, they're good. Network with Peter Finch. There are in all countries. Yeah. Well, that's going to happen in Metaverse, isn't it? Because they're going to remove real solid boundaries on the Earth and recreate them in this Metaverse, which we discussed in one of the other videos. It's quite ridiculous, really, with what they're going to do with that. Right, so let's see what. Let's have a look. I think there was one more I wanted to have a look at. That's right, NLP, which is what they've been using on all your courses as you progress through the corporate systems, your schools, everything, all as a teacher, as whatever. They're always sending you on courses. This is what they're using against you. It says NLP was partially based on Gregory Bateson's work for the OSS. Which became the CIA. You know, so the OS, Office of Strategic Services, was the British Imperial Intelligence Network setting itself up in the United States, which today we know as the CIA. So NLP was partially based on Gregory Bateson's work for the OSS and MK Ultra. Gregory Bateson continued to actively influence NLP. And now, Gregory Bateson's the guy who worked out this phrase, schismogenesis, when he claimed he found it by observing the Papua New Guinea tribe. However, we have found an earlier suggestion of this mechanic, not so much the word schismogenesis, but that the so-called Oitotois knew about this strategy, this mechanic, way before it was sort of reformulated under this term schismogenesis. That will probably bring to the table at some other point. Richard Bandler and John Grinder developed NLP. CIA attended NLP workshops. Gregory Bateson was a guest teacher at the Echelon Institute. Bandler and Grinder also drew upon theories of Gregory Bateson, Alfred Korzybski, and Noam Chomsky. Well, not Noam Chomsky. Well, come on. Particularly transformational grammar, as well as ideas and techniques from Carlos Castaneda. So you're looking at word wizards, yeah, and mind wizards here, especially with Bateson. But in Chomsky, word wizardry, you know, rhetoric, they formulate everything they do so that it taps you. Just like, let's say the documentary, let's say this live stream. If I was focused to creating specific musical tones, notes, constructs during this live stream, so I'd formulated what I'm going to say and themed it that way, I could end up, you could significantly improve people's attention span to it. Yeah, because that's what they're getting all the time from the TV. It's what they expect. And they don't realize, but it's the subconscious that's then. So if I wanted to draw an emotion to a particular thing I was saying, I'd draw it out by putting the music in the background to it. You with me? And this is how they do it. This is why you don't recognize that this is going on against you. But here we're talking about NLP. So background and origination of NLP, the ideas and approach found in NLP draw from two main areas of thought. The first is cybernetics, a cross-disciplinary view of how systems are organized based on feedback that was developed in the 1940s and 50s, in which another major influence on NLP, Gregory Bateson, was a core figure. Well, Bateson was a lifetime actor, which we've discussed in previous videos, i.e. from probably the moment he left college, he entered a life to become a lifetime actor in this charade, and he chose to be operating in the shrink mode capacity kind of thing. The founders of NLP, Bandler and Grinder, echo central principles of cybernetics when they say that the basic unit of analysis in face-to-face communication is the feedback loop. So that's very interesting. The second area of thought is that the work of Palo Alto Mental Research Institute, which is where most of your 60s stars and your 80s, 70s, 80s superstars were connected. And all your dance music, you know, stuff, they all harken back to this or other Californian areas that were tied into this mind job. Second area of thought was the Palo Alto Mental Research Institute in the 1960s, in which Bateson again was involved. Significantly, the Palo Alto research emphasized the pragmatics of human communication, which also characterizes NLP, and constructivism, which is the idea that people cannot know reality. As such, they act according to constructions they then create, which again is very true. And religion comes in and creates that religion, reality for you. Yeah, again, a feedback loop. So when you start breaking this stuff down in the principles that they're operating, and have operated to since its conception, you can start to see what they're actually doing and how they're actually and why they're having so much success, especially with what has just gone down in the last two. Oh, right. Okay. Well, right. Maybe you're probably right there. I mean, all I remember were they all had these stupid things in their hands. But I don't think I got that core message until a lot later on, actually. But I was never really into that kind of sci-fi stuff, because it were all bringing you to this next phase of God, aliens have arrived. You know? And then they can start shooting you with typhoons and these 17 Apaches they've just brought into this country. We've just bought 17 Apaches and they can detect 256 targets at the same time. So I'm thinking to myself, so they're getting this 7th gen in. Is it really this system for these monsters? Just us civilians then? Anyway, so I made a comment on Daily Telegraph because I'm now back on the Daily Telegraph in London. And it's been a long time, but I had a hell of a great relationship with that bunch back in the day. And I hope I can recover that again. Because then you're preaching to the unconverted. And that is difficult because you can't use any of the terms that you use in the alternative. The only way you can get into the unconverted is to speak it in the language they understand. So that's the Greek. It's historical perspective. And it's surprising. It's surprising that if you just play it correctly, you can actually help people to trip out of that feedback loop they've got going on. Didions. Oh, that's a new one. That's a new word. We're inventing words now. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say on that other one. Let me just check. There's a lot more on that. I'll put these links up actually under this video so you can watch them. Oh, this is an interesting one. It's only short. So, this is Reddit, and it was. Where would it put up this? This is from. It's 2 years ago, so 2020. It just says it's all feedback loop. I think this is some comment somebody's put. It says it's all feedback loops. That's how they're doing it. That's what sowing division is about. That's how you do it, through a process called schismogenesis. Just as the name suggests, self-amplifying loops create ever-increasing tensions between people. It does this by greatly distorting perceptions, such that both sides come to genuinely perceive the other as threats, which then justifies dirty tricks on both sides, which inflame tensions further. It's all a great big trick the Russians have perpetrated on America and the West. Now, I have an issue, and I've been upsetting folk a bit on Telegraph for this, but I think what people forget is that we're dealing now today with Russian people, albeit Putin at the top, okay? The Soviets, which was the problem for Russia from 1917, once the Iron Curtain was raised, moved off to China and created the corporation China, yeah? And we know that financing the Bolsheviks was Wall Street from London. So we know that. So we can trail that then, them psychos shifting through Russia and then on to China. So I don't like that we're using this term, Russia is bad at the moment. There's nothing wrong with Russian people. You know, I've met quite a lot when we had a lot come over here for the last few years. I know they've gone back now and I don't blame them. But I don't find anything wrong with Russians people at all. I think they're really nice people. And so I have an issue with all this furore about them trying to transfer your fear off the P onto Russia. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get into the politics of it because I'm not going to claim in any way, shape or form Putin's any better than the rest. However, he is the only one that is putting out sensible rhetoric. You know, but what's being branded about now is that it's all Russia and China implementing these systems. Well, I'd say it's the Bolsheviks implementing this system. Let's try not calling each other national names, and let's try and work out so that we understand that it's a global conglomerate of societies, networks, foundations, do you know what I mean? Non-governmental kind of stuff. There is the network, the web, Committee 300, Jesuit, all the lot, rather than seeing it as individual nations. And So basically, we all either realise collectively how it's all being played against each other, or we destroy ourselves and nobody sees the future. So that's quite interesting. It's schismogenesis. It's not a new concept, but it's new in the sense that it's being pulled out and pushed out, which is why I'm helping it along, because it's extremely important for us to understand what's going down. So slowly but surely, we might get somewhere with that. So anybody got any questions? Because we are 1 hour 35. And I've noticed if these live streams go downhill, it's usually after about now. Yeah, I'm actually feeling quite okay, but I've noticed that if it's going to go downhill, with swearing or whatever, it's generally that last half hour. So, yeah. Well, Putin, as I said, Putin is not any different than the rest of the leaders. But his role is to play the wise man, you know. They want to transfer the fear of what they've just built up, and now they want to direct it on Russia. And I have to say, just watching the comments on the Daily Telegraph, I couldn't believe the amount of people baying for war. So I just pointed out that I hope these people, all you guys out there that are baying for this war, are going to be the first to sign up, because you're not having my offspring to fight this war you're going to do. No response to that. So I was quite surprised just how many numpties there are out there still that are pushing for war against Russia. I mean, what? That's got to be the most ludicrous idea anybody could come up with. If there's one thing we don't need as people, is a war. But it's the very thing the elite require. They need to kill the creditor. That's what it's about. Remember that. Kill the creditor, you keep the estate, the debt's gone. You've got to see these things, and that's what they, you know, whether it goes hot or not. My guess is it won't go necessarily hot. The fear of it will. They'll play out like they did in the Second World War. You'll get news. They'll create the pretend war on the news like they do with the acting that they do with all the disasters. But really, it'll be our own militaries firing in on us. Because I've seen that in the plans. That's that is one avenue that they have actually planned. The cover for that, of course, would be the extraterrestrials, because if the extraterrestrials are attacking you, you're in a feedback loop you're never going to get out of unless you see a shiny typhoon or Apache helicopter shooting the shit out of you. But under those circumstances, the chances of survival would be rather slim. So that's how I'm seeing the little shenanigans as a potential play out. But you've got that many going on, it's difficult to work out which one they're actually going to go with, because they probably don't even know which one they're going to go with. They just make sure they have everything set so they can go whichever path the situation requires. Well, exactly. Putin, Abad Lubavitch, they're every year, like they are in America, signing over our entire nations to Israel. Now, aren't they on the fourth do? I don't know what's going on over there. It is a racket. Killing the creditor is the greatest racket. They get away with all this. So from 1933, and the system they've created on the fear is coming to fruition for them. For us, it means we're all in debt. While you're alive, you might claim your estate back. Yeah, if they can kill you because you're the creditor, before you realise it, you're going to get a death certificate, they get to keep it and carry on. And they're moving it now into the metaverse. And going to do the same. Securitize it, bond the lot. They're going to do the same, but on your avatar. It's quite ridiculous, really. Yeah, it's keeping the fear going that they've rallied in everybody, the populations. Because you've got to understand, it's like raising it from the cauldron. The mass rallies Hitler used to carry out, the colour, everything, the lights, they were great giant rituals. And Hitler would be the conduit then for that force, and it would spread out amongst all that were there watching. Well, when they got the TV, they didn't need the mass rallies anymore. The TV does it. It's all ritual stuff. Everything they do is ritual. All of it. So yeah, they've raised this fear energy. It exists in the world. You can't destroy energy. You can only transmute it. You can only discharge it. You can't destroy energy. You can only change it. They've created this mass energy. They now want to manipulate it and move it wherever they want. And it looks to me like they've thrust it on Big Bear, the Russians. So that's my personal opinion. We suggested to the plod and poor and specialists to just spray a bit of that DOM freeze on the problem, not drink it. How did he become the Don? Who? Who's the Don? Am I missing somewhere? Who's the Skull and Bones member? Putin? I've not seen that. If you want to know, Skull and Bones, what's she called? Oh, bloody hell. Lovely lass. She were in Reagan's entourage. And her father was Skull and Bones, and when he died, she got his books, and it had all the members in, and she reads them out on videos, and I forgot her name. An old girl. Do what? In fact, it might be worth seeking them videos out. They need to be kept. I don't know what you mean about the freeze LFX. Digital ID. Yep. I can't argue with that. Echo 59. Right. Well, I've run out of jingo. Oh, we don't bother with trumpet stuff on here, lad. It's pointless. It just upsets Americans because they're not ready to figure out their feedback loop yet. And to be honest, it doesn't really look like he's doing right well, apart from using schismogenesis to perfection, which we will have to cover at some other point. Yep. Well, with that, folks, I think I will say thanks for joining, thanks for taking part, and till the next time.